Want to bring in Jeremi Suri, a professor of public affairs and history at the University of Texas at Austin. He's also the Mac Brown Distinguished Chair for Leadership in Global Affairs. Jeremi, thanks so much for joining us again. We really appreciate your time. And it sounds like we are having a bit of an audio issue with you there, Jeremi. I may see if you can unmute your mic, and if not, we'll take a quick break and come right back to you.
We're good.
There he is.
I can hear you now. Perfect.
Yep.
We want to make sure we can hear you. You always bring such wonderful context to international conflicts and things that are going on. We want to begin with those talks that we're watching for between top U.S. leaders and Iranian leaders. What can we expect those talks to look like? Do we have any insight from the past or what we can expect from those talks in the future?
Well, I think the talks will focus upon the nuclear question in Iran. Will Iran be able to continue its program or not? If it gives up its nuclear program, what will it get in return? For Iran, this is part of their crown jewels. And in a strange way, the events of the last 2 weeks have proven how important this is to the United States and Israel. So I think the Iranians still believe they have strong, and so the Iranians should back down and make more concessions. But I think the Iranians will continue to ask for a lifting of sanctions and other assistance from the United States and assurance that Israel will not attack them again.
And Jeremi, if we can get some history, some context, over the last many decades, 4 decades, tensions with Iran have escalated repeatedly. Can you back up, give us some history, and fill us in a little bit on that, on the impacts for just the larger region?
Sure. So Iran, over the last 3-4 decades, has been one of the chief sponsors of terrorism in the Middle East. This goes back to the Americans who were held hostage in the American embassy in Tehran in 1979, and then Americans who were held hostage in Beirut in the early 1980s, and certainly through the funding of Hezbollah and other terrorist groups. Iran is a primary terrorist sponsor. Their approach to foreign policy has been to use terrorist proxies. Israel has spent the last 3 to 4 decades trying to resist Iranian terrorism and has moved toward, especially since October 7th, 2023, Israel has moved toward a preventive policy of not only fighting terrorism, but going after the source of terrorism in Iran. And so that's where we've seen an escalation in the last 2 years, and particularly in the last few weeks. The United States' position has been to limit and sanction Iranian terrorist activity and to try to limit and prevent Iran from developing a nuclear weapon, but not to infringe upon the sovereignty of Iran, but instead to seek some sort of negotiated solution. That was the U.S. position until President Trump launched the preventive strikes on Iran last weekend. And so now we're in a new space. We don't know, are we going to go back to negotiations? That's what President Trump has said. Or are we going to continue to use preventive force? And the Iranians are seeking wherever they can to show that they will not give in to force and to try to get more leverage for their negotiating position.
You mentioned Israel there. The ceasefire at the moment appears to be holding between those two countries. It was, of course, a bumpy ride getting there, both countries accusing the other of violating that ceasefire. So talk about generally what goes into brokering these kind of ceasefires, particularly when things feel on such a precipice and tensions are so high.
So the ceasefire usually occurs after both sides have tired themselves out and they need a time at least to gather themselves and to have a sense of where they are. The Israelis did not want a ceasefire right now because their military activities in Iran were quite successful. They had killed a large number of Iranian military leaders, killed a large number of scientists, taken out a lot of sites. When we're talking about whether the Iranian nuclear project has been pushed back or not, it's really a question not just about American strikes, but also about Israeli activity. So Israel was gaining the military upper hand, but the United States, President Trump in particular, does not want to see this expand into a wider war. The retaliation from Iran has been on civilian targets in Israel, but not on American targets. There was one set of strikes on Qatar on an American base. but the Iranians warned us in advance. So President Trump is trying to make sure this does not widen into a regional war. The Iranians are willing to accept a ceasefire because it looks to their people, they think, like they have stood up to Israel and stood up to the United States. And Israel accepted a ceasefire because I think they were not given a choice by President Trump if they wanted to continue to receive American support. So one way or another, I think President Trump has been instrumental in bringing us to this ceasefire. But the question is if it will hold or not. Ceasefires in this region often do not hold.
Jeremi, if we can turn a little bit, President Trump just got back from a NATO summit. He pushed for other NATO countries to increase, in many cases, double their defense spending. So can you unpack the history there of military spending in Europe and why this is such a high priority of the Trump administration?
That's a great question. So the United States, since 1949, when NATO was formed, the United States has been the leading military element, way above all of its peers within NATO. The defense of Western Europe has been a priority for the United States, and that's a priority we've doubled down on after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And so the United States has pulled way ahead of its partners in NATO in the quality of our equipment and the kind of equipment we deploy, because we invest so much more in our military as a whole. We're so much bigger than any European state, and we have put more emphasis upon the global projection of our military power, whether we're talking about Iraq, whether we're talking about the United States Navy in the Pacific and the Atlantic. European states have not had the resources, nor have they had the technology to do this. President Trump and other American presidents have been trying in recent years to get the Europeans to invest more. But this 5% number, it's political symbolism. There's no way European states are going to reach the level of operability that the United States has. Our military is so much larger. And the truth is that European states are giving a lot of aid to Ukraine, in some ways more than the United States is. So a lot of this is political theater. Yes, Europeans should contribute more to NATO's defense, but this is a way of trying to show Americans that we're spending less and they're spending more. It's not as much of a national security issue as it is political theater.
Lots to watch to see how that plays out in real time, and I'm sure we will be bothering you again. Jeremi, thank you so much for joining us and giving us such great historical context and information that we need to be watching these international news events. So Jeremi, thanks for joining us today.
Always my pleasure. Thank you.